stay in Asia for the penultimate round of the 2015 FF1M Championship as we go from Malaysia to China and the Shanghai International Circuit. And joining us for the first time since Road America is Joseph Willows.
I was starting to wonder whether you'd forgotten about me, James, to be honest with you, but yeah, it has been a while, but glad to be back.
Glad to have you back too, and a lot has happened since Road America, which includes your 1-2 victory at Hockenheim and a second for Rosberg at Monza.
Yes, it has indeed, although I'm not expecting the same to happen in these remaining few races, to be quite honest with you, because I'll be honest with you now, I have since frozen my development for the rest of the season, so I'm now focusing on 2016.
I think a lot of teams might well be doing that at this point of the season, but who knows, there might still be 1 or 2 rogues. So there's a couple sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, there was a couple of reasons why I've decided to freeze them at this point. One was because I want to really sort out this reliability issue that's been plaguing us since we first got here. And the second reason being is because, well, I actually missed the deadline. Sorry, AJ. I really am sorry there. So I thought, might as well just freeze development at this point so that it doesn't harm us too much and hopefully focus on next year where we hope to be back at the front, especially when we've got Max Verstappen joining the team. Yes, Verstappen and Van Dorn, that should be an interesting combination. And there's a couple of hot battles still to decide in the 2015 Championship. The runner-up spot in the Drivers' Championship, there's a battle for third in the Constructors and a hot battle for last, which has got very interesting because one of those teams involved in the battle for last is on pole with Romain Grosjean. Jeez.
I know that was an unexpected one, but a good result nonetheless. Thomas Gonzalez on the front row, and then we've got Kimi Raikkonen third with new world champion Fernando Alonso in fourth position. Then on row 3...
Shame you couldn't do that at Willows, to be honest.
Sergio Perez and Felipe Massa on row 3 for Pedersen and Meister respectively. Nico Rosberg's up in 7th and Cooper Lee 8th, so not all doom and gloom for yourself in qualifying.
I'm a bit surprised about that, because in practice we looked a little bit off the pace, but both cars in the top 10. Very interesting.
Hamilton and Van Dorn 9th and 10th. And Kevin Magnussen's up in 11th with Sebastian Vettel down in 12th. That's his worst qualifying of the season, beating his Estoril effort. And Sainz 13th ahead of Daniel Ricardo in 14th. Next up on row 8 we have got Jean-Eric Verne and twice race winner this season Valtteri Bottas in GRM. Won at Spa and Monza, good victories for him. And then we've got Robert Kubica 17th and then Jenson Button, poor guy, down in 18th position. But there's an interesting one about Button coming up, but I'll get onto that a bit later once we confirm Itsuki Yoshida and Cristobal Alvarez on row 10. And then filling the back row, we have got Nico Hülkenberg way down in 21st and Antonio Felix da Costa in 22nd.
Vettel has just fell off a cliff, hasn't he? I think Tobias mentioned it in the last race. They've struggled to get some points recently, and that's what's cost them the championship this season.
Yeah, Shake and Bake have had the worst point scoring run since Silverstone, just 3 points. Even worse than me. That's nothing to be proud of. So the 5 lights go out very quickly, and from pole position, Romain Grosjean gets away well. Thomas Gonzalez still in second, but he's up the inside into the first corner. And who's going to take the lead? Is it Grosjean or is it Gonzalez as we round the ever-tightening first corner into the left-hand hairpin? Looks like Grosjean's taken that with the inside line, and then we've got Kimi Raikkonen maintaining third ahead of Alonso. Massa and Rosberg's up a position. Perez has had a poor start from 5th down to 7th as we go into a corner that's caused a bit of accidents before, but at the moment they all look to have got through safely. In the background, running up the last place is Nico Hülkenberg, but there's your leader, Romain Grosjean.
Surprised they kept it clean at that corner, because in other races I've seen at that corner there's always seems to be carnage on lap 1, but clearly these boys are keeping it clean today.
Keeping it clean so far. And I remember it was Kevin Magnussen who got involved in the incident at that very corner last season. He's obviously got through safely, still in 11th, 10 places behind that driver there, Grosjean. How aggressive have Tornado gone with the engine settings? We'll find out as we go onto the back straight, on board with Thomas Gonzalez.
Let's have a look, and he's just going to blast past him, I think, isn't he? Yeah, just like that, Gonzalez into the lead.
Still looking for his first win of the season is Thomas, and by taking the lead on the first lap. He's done his chances quite a bit of good, and similarly, his teammate Fernando Alonso has moved up to second. I think Rosberg was having a defensive attempt at Perez. I think Perez is trying to have a go back. There's some lockups. That was Da Costa, and it's Thomas Gonzalez leading.
Yep, indeed, and I am still a little bit surprised that he hasn't got a victory this season, because when I was commentating FF1M, he was just a dominant driver in that series, but he's so far yet to grab that brass ring in this series.
But he's put himself in decent position to do so, all expecting 2 stops for the entire field, so it'll be dependent on which of these drivers makes that first stop, and then using the undercut to take the driver in front. But for the moment, the Tornadoes are on the move. It looks like Alonso's about to shape himself up for a run at Grosjean.
Yep, and I think it's just going to be the same story with Gonzalez. Yep, it's the Tornado 1-2, just like it was at Malaysia.
Plain sailing then for Fernando Alonso, but he's defending a bit, trying to make sure he keeps that second position, but it looks like he's done that. So let's see who's making moves in the background. Sainz versus Hamilton, not quite. And Cooper Lee having a look at Valtteri Bottas. Vern up the inside of Yoshida. Alvarez is making his way through the order quite nicely. He's up to 17th from 20th on the grid. I must admit, I have gone full Ers for this race.
You did hint at that at the last race, I do believe, James.
Yeah, I did the same thing when Benjamin Pryor had his 2 races. So yeah, we only had Mode 1 for Spa and then Mode 3 for Monza. And then doing the same thing for Alvarez in his 2 race stint. Oh, bit of a lock-up for... Who is that? It's the other Gajera. That's Vern in front of Kubica.
It seems while one's making progress, the other one is going backwards. So is the plan to put Pryor back in for the last race then, or are you planning to keep Alvarez for the remainder of the season?
I'm actually going to put Charlotte Plectrum back in the drive for the final race.
Ah, interesting. Interesting stuff.
Partly as a reward for an entertaining drive at Hockenheim, but I've been quite fair to my 2 test drivers, getting 2 races each. So Massa is now having a look up at Kimi Raikkonen at the back straight. It's a drag race into the final hairpin, but who's going to win out? It's probably going to be Massa.
Yep, and that's P4 for the Brazilian. And it's fair to say Meister have had a very good first season in FF1M. I want to bring up last time out, because I think Tobias mentioned somewhere he believes that GRM could possibly... Did he say they could possibly get second in the championship? Because I would lean towards Meister, if I'm being totally honest with you.
I think Meister is safe in second. It's a battle for third between GRM as Kevin Magnussen is making his way. That's past Hamilton, and I think Bottas has just taken Hamilton as well. It's a 3-way battle for third between GRM, Shakenbeck and Gajera. I think Meister are some 30-odd points ahead of GRM, so they're pretty safe.
Apparently there's an entertaining fight for last in the Constructors, I've heard as well. Thankfully it doesn't involve my team.
No, I think your team... Oh, Van Dorn getting a nudge from behind by Kubica, or is that Vern? I think it's Vern, actually.
Yeah, it's Vern. It seems unseen by the cameras. Kubica's actually overtook Vern somewhere, so Van Dorn now finding himself in a... I keep forgetting the team name, because Guy keeps changing it every season, doesn't it?
It's the Gajera.
There we go.
As Alvarez is having a look at Jean-Eric Verne, trying to use his Mode 3, as we're going to see a Tornado battle for the lead. I'll get onto Tornado in one moment, and you mentioned the battle for last, which consists of, I think Sainz has just got past Rosberg, and in fact Rosberg's dropped behind Perez as well, so we may get a replay of that, but yeah, there's a battle for last between at least 3 teams, Exolite, Pedersen and FJR. Mitchell might be in that battle for last, and if they're not careful, Andrew might be in that battle for last as well, but I think they may be safe.
And this is what happened to Rosberg, and he just went wide, and that's how he lost those 2 places. But, in fact, he got a little bit of a bump there from Carlos Sainz, and I'm going to presume Sainz got him onto the straight, and yeah, I am correct.
Yep. So Sainz making his way past Rosberg, as was Sergio Perez. Oh, what on earth is that? Magnussen versus Bottas into the final corner. And not quite making that stick is Bottas, but here are the 2 Tornadoes about to go into combat. And speaking of which, there's talks that Alonso may move to Exolite a bit early. James Whiteley is up for a swap with Jenson Button Tornado looking to get Jenson Button in for the final race to give him a last hurrah.
I did hear that Tobias was contemplating trying to put Button in his car as well in the last race. I don't know if he meant that as a joke or not, but...
No, he was dead serious about that, and and Whiteley is up for the swap as Alonso takes the lead from Gonzalez. And that swap it just depends on if AJ's up for that. So we'll see if that actually happens.
Well, he's probably listening to that right now, probably contemplating it himself. So we'll see about that one.
We'll see. So it's now Fernando Alonso who leads as we go on to the 7th lap, and Thomas Gonzalez.
Oh, he got a little bit of oversteer there, and it's led to a lock-up.
Bit of a twitch on for the Argentine. And here is Cristobal Alvarez making contact with the Mitchell of Cooper Lee, and that's Van Dorn helping him back round. Thank you, Joseph.
No problem. Alvarez, yeah, he's another guy who I came across, obviously, during a brief spell when I was commentating for the FF2M Asia series, and I think he's also got quite a lot of potential as well, although I do think, compared to Gonzalez, I think he's a little bit shaky, to say the least.
Yeah, he won the 2014-15 Asia series, but it's kind of gone off the boil a bit in the main Europe series. Even Benjamin Pryor outscored him, which is a little bit worrying, but anyway, Could he be one of them drivers that usually cracks under pressure? Maybe so. I mean, he did win a sprint race at the Red Bull Ring in the 2015 Europe series, but he was a champion last time out in the Asia and can't take part in the Asia series, which is underway.
It is indeed, and I'm still yet to keep up on what's going on that, because I seem to still keep hope with Esteban Ocon at the moment that he'll hopefully have a very good season at some point.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of blows hot and cold in some ways. He's either performs brilliantly or performs really badly.
I mean, the season where Van Dorn was in it, he was actually pretty good. Obviously not to the level of what Van Dorn was doing, but he put on some very good performances. But at the moment, he just seems to be struggling to maintain what he had back in the 2014 season for some reason.
More contact with Alvarez, this time on Lewis Hamilton for 12th position. He's going for it, is Alvarez, and I'm enjoying that.
Fernando Alonso, meanwhile, is coming into the pits this lap, as you can see with the icon on the bottom left. So possibly a two-stop here we're looking at for Fernando?
A two-stop with a short first stint, I think. Looks like all drivers are looking to do two stops, but AM depends whenabouts they take the first one. So Alonso using a lighter fuel load to pull away from Gonzalez, and now he's the first one in. And it's tricky pit lane.
It is a very tricky pit lane. Just asked Lewis Hamilton in real life back in 2007.
And Maldonado at least twice.
Yes. Although he gets used more for the memes, really, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and it was at this circuit as well where Maldonado went off having been distracted by his own steering wheel in practice.
Keep your eyes peeled, Pastor. Anyway, Fernando finishes his pit stop, Perez also in, and Alonso's coming out in, it looks like 7th place. So just a little bit of traffic, but not too much.
Just a bit, and that's the one disadvantage of making an early pit stop. He's showing he's in 9th, actually, so it's behind Robert Kubica in the Gojira. So he'll have to make that move pretty quickly if he's to make use of these new tyres.
And it looks like he's going to try and have a go at him down at the straight. And if it was anything to go by with Grosjean, I think we're going to see a repetitive thing here. Although, having said that, Alonso's not getting that far alongside Kubica. So I wonder if he's running higher engine modes as well. Unless he's going to try and leave his braking quite a bit late. Meanwhile, in front, Bottas on the inside of Magnussen. Not going to quite work. And same goes for Alonso and Kubica. So that's going to cost him in his fight with Gonzalez.
Yeah, either Gojira are running some higher engine modes, or Tornado have turned their engine down.
Perhaps it could be either one of those things, but Alonso's going to try and go for it into turn 1, is he? I think he's got him this time, and yep, up into what will be P7 now, because Bottas is in the pits.
It's a good move from Fernando, as good racing from Kubica as well, to leave space for Alonso, who's now coming up the back of Magnussen, who's not the easiest driver in the world to overtake, but I like him for that.
You'd like that in real life, isn't he, K-Mag?
Yeah.
Let's see if Fernando can get through quite easily, though. You mentioned that you're on quite higher engine mode, so let's see what it's like with the Tornado alongside.
And Magnussen has a little bit of a distance slipstream. I think Alonso's having to go back for some more slipstream, and now Magnussen defending the inside line, and Alonso can't... Oh, nearly contact with the front wing there. That's aggressive from Kevin.
Yep, proving what you said a little bit earlier on.
I just want to go back to Willows, actually, yourself, and I neglected to mention how good Rosberg's drive was in Monza, because he went from 15th all the way to finish second. Magnussen slightly wide at the first corner. I think he's just about okay to hold on, but here comes Alonso inside, but not quite managing it there. Yeah, Rosberg's drive in Monza was actually a lot better than I realised, from 15th to second.
Yeah, and it was a great performance from Nico that race. If I'm not mistaken, that was the race where Van Dorn's mechanical failure was not seen by the cameras for some reason.
Yeah, we didn't see anything of Van Dorn in that race, but it was when I watched it back, when Button's engine exploded. Oh, Alonso!
Oh, Fernando! That was lucky there. Had he gone off there, that would have given Gonzalez an easy run to the front of the field.
Yeah, the gap between Gonzalez and Alonso is 20 seconds, so I have to keep an eye out for how long the pit stop is. But yeah, Van Dorn, you could just see him in the background of when Button's engine explodes, him slowing at the exit of Curva Grande. That was when he had his issue, which I think was a puncture in the end.
Ah, well, I guess it was caught in some way then.
In some way, but missed in the original broadcast, as Alonso finally gets up the inside of Magnussen into the final corner and takes a temporary 4th position, but should still be the lead of the race once the top 3 make pit stops. Gonzalez
kind of had to do that, really, didn't he, given how aggressive K-Mag has been in this race?
Absolutely. The gap's still 20.2 seconds, but now, 1 lap later, it's now 18.1, so new tyres, it appears, are quite powerful.
Thomas Gonzalez now then into the pits this lap, and we should expect him to possibly rejoin behind his teammate Alonso, but of course he will have fresher tyres, so he might be able to catch up.
Yes, and if Alonso's been held up by Magnussen quite severely, then Gonzalez could well be on the attack, and it also depends on how much fuel he takes on board as well, because there's another pit stop to go after this.
Yep, as you said, we are expecting most of the field to do 2 stops around here at Shanghai, so it should be quite interesting. And he takes 20 laps worth of fuel, so going to around lap 38 perhaps, because they don't go all the way to the brim, do they, with these cars?
Absolutely, yes. And Kimi Raikkonen making a pit stop as well. I think Grosjean has made a pit stop as well. So it's as you are now, and it's Rosberg. Oh dear.
Oh. Even with a frozen development, I get issues.
Were you on mode 1 as well?
Well, I presume I was on mode 1 because I didn't submit the
gotcha.
the final spreadsheet, as I said earlier on. So even with mode 1, it doesn't seem to help with the reliability.
That's unfortunate for Nico, who's on his way to Pedersen next season alongside Nicholas Latifi.
Yep, his final season. Obviously, I wanted to keep Nico, but to be quite honest, he wasn't very happy at Willows, to be quite honest. So rather than waste my time and trying to lure him back to the team, I went, you know what, there's a promising young prospect in young Max Verstappen that could be very useful at Willows. So I went with Verstappen over Rosberg and allowed him to go somewhere else for what will be his final season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, that's correct. He's announced his retirement from FF1M, but will compete in one more. Made his debut in the back end of 2005, and then won the championship in his first full season. That was with FJR, actually. And speaking of which, there's Cristobal Alvarez, who's made his way into the points. He's up into 8th. That's not bad.
Good showing from the, I think he's from Uruguay, isn't he? The Uruguay driver.
The capital of Uruguay, yeah. But he's got a rampant Grosjean, who's dropped down to 9th. That's a curious one. He's obviously very, very poor race pace or a late pit stop.
The Pedersen must be only good on 1 lap pace then, because clearly in the races they seem to struggle.
Yeah, although Perez is up in 4th and defending that from Kimi Raikkonen, I did actually spot that the Ilmore cars didn't feature very high up in practice, but they've also got a good air system because they've all qualified except for Button in the top 10.
Yeah, Curious case with Button, isn't it? Why he's not been able to score points this season, whereas his teammate has been able to. Obviously, you would expect that, given that he's partnered alongside... It is Lewis Hamilton, isn't it? He's partnered alongside at the moment.
Yeah.
I put at the moment because of this whole thing that's going on between Tornado and Exolite at the moment.
Yes. That's correct. So GRM's having a bit of a battle. One of them running wide, and is that going to give Alvarez an opportunity to take 7th? Indeed it is. Sainz making the mistake at the first corner and losing a position to Cristobal Alvarez.
And now Alvarez finds himself in a GRM sandwich. I must say, for George Rook, this is probably his best ever season he's had regardless.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, a chance at finishing 3rd in the championship would easily be his best season. Mostly thanks to Bottas. He's been a bit of a breakthrough for him.
Kind of like what he's doing in real life with Alfa Romeo, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah. As of recording this, he's topped the first practice at Silverstone, so that's a good effort, although it was a bit damp.
And a bit changeable as well. I do believe that in FP2, I think one of the Ferraris topped it, if I'm not mistaken.
Gotcha.
So, anyway, as Perez was overtaken by Raikkonen, but he looks like he's trying to get him back, although he looks like he's going to lock up, and that allows Raikkonen through. 2 former teammates, in fact. Yeah,
excellent last season. A bit of contact between Sainz and Grosjean, although I think Kubica might have been involved in that as well. And Kevin Magnussen is lurking up to these 3 as well. Now we've got... Oh, is it Perez slowing? Perez slowing down.
Oh, what a shame for Perez.
Absolutely. Bottas up to 5th, Alvarez up to 6th. He nearly had a look at Bottas for 5th. And pit indicator on, so hopefully for his and Pedersen's sake, he'll be back in the race after a fresh set of tyres and new steering wheel.
Yeah, perhaps, as his teammate, meanwhile, was trying to get by on Sainz there, thanks to all that carnage. So, as you could say, as we're going 3 wide here, in fact.
Yeah, look at this kerfuffle. There's Kubica on the inside. There's Magnussen having a look. Magnussen taking 2 positions almost. He has done just about. Or is Sainz going to get better traction out of the hairpin into the final corner? I think he has just about.
He could try and get him around the outside into the final corner, and I think he has done, as it's an electrical problem for Perez.
Oh, you're quite right. Magnussen has taken Sainz, so both FJRs in the points, and if they're going to avoid finishing last, that'll do me a lot of good.
Yep, and speaking of which, this battle is still continuing as Grosjean is now trying to have a go at Sainz, but can't find a way through, and he's also got Vone for company as well.
We switch back to the 2 Tornadoes now. Alonso now just 2.3 seconds ahead of Gonzalez, so that earlier pit stop for Alonso is now spoiling his own race because Gonzalez is catching up very, very quickly.
Well, the later you go with your strategy, the more likely you'll have fresher tyres compared to your opponent, and I talked about earlier how Gonzalez may be able to catch up on fresher tyres. It's a loose wheel for one of your guys.
It's Magnussen, and I think he's not going to make it. That loose wheel's a bit terminal.
Yep, he's parking up near where Nico Rosberg pulled up.
Yeah, maybe a little bit further back. But yeah, that's a shame for Kevin and a little bit of a worry for myself and Alvarez.
Yeah, you've always ended up on the brunt end of reliability, haven't you, James?
It's been okay as reliability, not the best, but certainly not the worst, as the 2 Tornadoes are about to lap. I think that's Yoshida, who's just passing Magnussen to move up a position, but let's be honest, 16th and 20th are nothing to write home about.
Whereas it looked like there, Gonzalez just had a little bit of slipstream there on Fernando Alonso, and yeah, that's that really. It seems that, just going on the topic of shake and bake, it seems like they kind of fell into a similar trap like they did, I think, last season, wasn't it? With well, in fact, no, because Ricardo actually did decent, but it seems like they fell into a similar trap that, was it Pedersen fell into with Kobayashi, if I'm not mistaken, where they have one driver that's performing and the other one that just seems to be struggling with that car.
That back in the 2011 season, it might have been.
Yeah, because they had Hamilton and Kobayashi, didn't they? And they had Hamilton that was performing very well, and Kobayashi who was just nowhere, and yet somehow Pedersen still won the Constructors' title somehow.
Yeah, and Hamilton could have easily won the Drivers in that season as well, because he had at least 2 or 3 races where he'd retired from the lead with mechanical issues.
Just want to go back onto the whole thing with Max Verstappen, because there was something I found that was very coincidental. Because when I hired Max Verstappen, he was leading the FF2M Championship at the time.
Yeah.
But since then, he somehow lost it to James Clark.
Yeah, he
How has that one happened?
Yeah, he had a terrible final half of the season. I think it was from Hockenheim where it just didn't work for him. There's a shaker mate getting involved in all sorts. What on earth is he doing? It's Yoshida, and he's influencing this battle for the lead somehow.
Imagine if this was Vettel and not Yoshida. I know the championship is over, but, you know.
Yeah, it's like, I've lost the championship. Screw you. I'm getting involved in this.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Courtney Cass had the same opinion there.
So we move on to lap 30 now, and it is Alonso leading by just 0.4 of a second from Gonzalez. Then we've got the two Meisters, 3rd and 4th. Bottas is up in 5th, ahead of Cristobal Alvarez, 6th, and then we've got Kubica and Pole Sitter Grosjean completing the top 8.
Yep, and now that the traffic is out of the way, I would not be surprised if Gonzalez actually goes for a move on Alonso on this lap. Clearly no team orders at Tornado anymore, given that they've wrapped up both championships, so they're both now free to race. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of times this season they have come to blows.
Nürburgring and Hungaroring, and a little bit at Spa as well. They've been in the wars with each other, and I think at this stage I don't think they'll be caring who takes each other out, if that comes to that.
Do you think, as a result, because we know that Alonso is going to Exelite next season, but we know that Gonzalez is staying at Tornado, do you think that with Alonso out of the picture, do you think this could give Gonzalez his best chance to possibly go for the title next season, should Tornado still be competitive?
Yeah, it's a good opportunity for him. I mean, Perez is no slouch, but I think that'll be quite evenly matched between the two, as Gonzalez trying to get up the inside of Alonso into the final hairpin, Alonso not defending that one, and Gonzalez back in the lead.
Yep, and whether he can hold on to that or not, we'll have to wait and see, because we've still got the second round of pit stops to negotiate. Sorry if you can hear my dogs in the background, by the way.
I can just about hear them, yes. Gonzalez feeling the need to defend going into the final corner, and Alonso choosing the outside, now switching to the inside into the first corner, not quite making that one stick, so it's Gonzalez leading for now.
Yep, and that proves straight away that there is no team orders at Tornado whatsoever. Not that they need them anyway, because as mentioned, they've wrapped up both championships.
Yeah, it's the 7th championship for Tornado and their 6th Drivers' Championship. 7th out equals the record of the Gajira Gi Racing conglomerate.
Yep, indeed, and it looks like Gonzalez is about to pull a bit of a gap now, it seems, to Fernando Alonso.
In the middle of the circuit, and it's 0.6 of a second. So he's not actually opened that much of a gap. He overtook him about 5 laps ago, maybe 4 laps ago, and Alonso's staying with him, so it should be a battle that will remain until possibly the end of the race, if they're coming on the same lap as each other.
Yep, as Hamilton meanwhile comes into the pits, and surprisingly, Alonso keeping up with Gonzalez at this point. So
Exelite, this sits 13th, well at the moment 13th, but Hamilton in the pits are 19th on the timing charts. They are the ones who currently sit last in the championship, and with them out of the points at the moment, it won't do their chances much good. Who's above them? It's Pedersen, and Perez is down in 16th after an unscheduled stop, and Grosjean in 8th. But FJR sit 2 points ahead of Pedersen, and they've got Alvarez up in 6th at the moment. And Mitchell aren't exactly safe, they're only 2 points ahead of FJR. I think Alonso's coming in the pits this lap. I can see Gonzalez's indicators on.
Yep, red usually means their teammate is pitting, so yep, Alonso will pit in this lap. And I do want to point out where Sebastian Vettel is. Jeez.
Yeah, although he has made a second pit stop, that is a low position, and yeah, nothing really more to say other than that.
I think it was speculated in the last race that Shake and Bake may be focusing a little bit on next season, so I think this pretty much confirms it if they are lower down in this position at the moment.
Yep. I think Bottas has just come into the pits because he's dropped briefly behind Alvarez. There's confirmation of Bottas in the pits, so he was the first one of that little battle between himself and Alvarez to blink. So he should maintain 5th, I think.
I've also noticed as well that both Gonzalez and Alonso have got the same laps of fuel, so judging from the fact that Alonso's pitting this lap, I would imagine that Gonzalez will pit the next lap.
So if Alonso gets some clear track after this pit stop, he may well jump Gonzalez.
and then it will be a more equal fight to see who's going to be the one that finishes the race, because unless something happens, I think it is going to be one of these tornado drivers that is going to win this race, because as you can see, the gap to the next nearest car is 21 seconds, and that's the Meister of Felipe Massa.
Yep, once again, Massa performing quite well, ahead of his own teammate, and just below the shot there, Alonso into the pits. So, will Gonzalez's indicator come on, or will he start for an extra lap, see if he can get another lap fresher tyres? We'll see what happens in the next few laps. Cooper Lee also into the pits, as is Jenson Button, who was the driver being lapped by the Tornadoes at the time.
Yep, there's a lot of pit activity, in fact. It's not just the Tornado mechanics out, there's a lot of them out in the pit lane at the moment.
And 6.8 seconds, that's not the quickest stop in the world, so maybe Gonzalez, if he pits on this next lap, if he gets a good pit stop in, he may still be ahead of Alonso.
Yep, and he rejoined in third position, in fact, so it just shows how dominant Tornado have been in this race, as Gonzalez, as predicted, is pitting this lap.
And Alvarez in the pits as well, hoping to stay in touch of Bottas, or maybe even challenge Bottas in the late stages. Daniel Ricciardo in the pits as well.
A lot of pit activity, as you can see down the bottom, and the question is, will Alonso be able to jump Gonzalez after he makes his second and presumably final stop of the race? I presume it will be his final stop, judging from Fernando, so let's see.
Let's see, and out of the hairpin comes Thomas Gonzalez, and then instead of turning left at the final corner, he's just going to go straight on past the camera, and then a tight left, where Hamilton beached it one year, and down into the pits, slowing for the speed line, about 50 miles an hour. Spot your mechanics, turn right. Not those mechanics, but the ones afterwards.
They're a little bit deceiving, aren't they, these mechanics?
A little bit, yes.
As they get to work on his car, and it is a 6.5 second pit stop. Where is Alonso on the track? Let's see, keep an eye on the right side. If I can just saw him there in the background, there he is.
Down the main straight, where's Gonzalez? There's Gonzalez, Alonso's in the lead.
Yep, he did just enough, but Gonzalez does have one lap fresher tyre, so he can still get him back if he can get them up to speed quick enough.
Absolutely, rounding the left-hand hairpin of 3 and 4, I think it's marked on the map. A little kink as Grosjean comes into the pits from what was 5th position, but it'll drop down a bit. Here's Valtteri Bottas going through turn 1, Kubica, and then Verne. And then behind is Alvarez. There's Grosjean exiting the pits. Behind Alvarez.
Yep, the Uruguay driver is still in the points at the moment, as now we've got the two Tornadoes again fighting for the lead. This is Gonzalez's best chance to possibly win this race.
Possibly to win his first race in his FF1M career. Alonso, as Yoshida retires from the race with the gearbox, as Gonzalez smoking his front tyres a bit.
Are you too used to Alonso doing the chasing rather than Gonzalez here, James?
Yeah, this is new for me.
Always seems to be a thing with number 1 and number 2 drivers. I think it's pretty obvious. That's been the code this season with both Alonso and Gonzalez.
Yeah. We just saw Sainz taking Lewis Hamilton. I was about to mention that Alvarez lost a position in the pits to both Gajieras, but he's right at the back of Jean-Eric Verne and looking to retake one of those two Gajieras. Kubica's some 4 seconds ahead of the Uruguayan.
Yep, and he looks like he wants some more points, it seems, because he's right onto the gearbox now of Jean-Eric Verne, and his first chance to get him will obviously be down at that very long back straight, which leads down into the hairpin. Verne going very defensive through into the left-hander before they make their way through this. Quite interesting right-hander, because it's obviously flat to start off with, but then it goes banked in the second part of the track, and now he's going to already get alongside him, but will it be enough, of course?
Will it be enough? I think he's just about inching ahead. That's Mode 3 Judd versus a very powerful Mugen race engine. But Alvarez up to 7th position. It would be a bit ironic if he finishes 7th, because when Pryor had his 2 races, he achieved a 7th position as well. So, oddly equal.
Are you just trying to prove something to Shell Pick here, or not?
No, I'm not actually. No, I mean, because my season was going quite badly, it'd be worth trying my 2 test drivers out to see what happens. But I was very surprised that Pryor actually got points, but it was a fun race to watch as Grosjean takes Vern for 8th position at the final corner.
Vern seems to be suffering a little bit. I wonder how old his tyres are at this point, because at the moment he's being swamped.
Yeah, he might well have been one of the first on to make his second pit stop, and it paid off initially, getting ahead of Alvarez, but now it's not exactly paying off. We've got Daniel Ricciardo versus Lewis Hamilton down the back straight. I'm just having a look at the gaps. Alonso's pulled out a bit over Thomas Gonzalez now. It's 3.5 seconds. So Gonzalez is going to have to find something special if he's going to win his first race.
As Ricardo takes P11 from Lewis Hamilton. Indeed, it's a little bit odd seeing Lewis Hamilton down in these positions. I mean, I know we're kind of used to it in real life this season, but not to this extent. Hamilton should be fighting up at the front, not where he is at the moment.
No, it just goes to show how bad the X-Lite car actually is.
It's not my fault you can't utilise the Ilmore engine that well, James Whiteley.
Perez tagging Yoshida.
I think it's Vettel, actually.
It's Vettel, yeah, sorry, Vettel.
I mean, I know we're too used to Yoshida being down the field, but given how bad the shake and bake has been in these last few races, I think we've got to get used to the fact that both of them are performing this. And again, Perez being very aggressive. He's really getting his elbows out at the moment.
Trying to impress his new bosses for next season, Tornado. And speaking of which, this is Alonso going on to his final lap of the race. And he's pulled out once Gonzalez crosses the start-finish line. 6.4 seconds.
A little bit surprised that Gonzalez has dropped back because he had one lap fresher tyres compared to Alonso, so clearly he's not been able to make this stint work.
Yeah, maybe he damaged the tyres a little bit when he locked up on his one chance to try and take Alonso, so maybe he's just backing off from excessive vibrations.
Well, if he wants a victory this season, he's only going to have one more chance, and that will be at the next race.
At Interlagos, and if Button is his teammate for that race, then that'll be an even better chance for him. Not that I'm trying to diss Button on or anything, but it's clear that but it's clear that Button's had a terrible season, that he's approaching the end of his career, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, retiring a season early is Button, of course. He was scheduled to retire at the end of 2016, but obviously it's been pushed forward to 2015, judging from this season. But if he does end up at the Tornado, it will be quite fitting, of course, because that was the team that he won his championship with in 2008, if I'm not mistaken.
And that's exactly why Tobias wants him for the final race.
But in the meantime, if this is Alonso's final race for Tornado, for the meantime, because he could come back in the future like he has done several times, what a perfect way to do it.
Absolutely, exiting the final corner, and to take yet another victory, I believe his 6th or 7th of the season, we'll check that later, and it's Alonso winning the Chinese Grand Prix.
Great stuff indeed, and proving why he is a three-time world champion.
Absolutely, and taking another second place is Thomas Gonzalez. Could have been a win this time around, but Alonso just a bit too good in that final stint in the end, and Massa third. That's exactly the same result as in Sepang. Alonso, Gonzalez and Massa.
What is this, the new Hamilton Bottas Verstappen?
And Kimi Raikkonen takes 4th for Meister, ahead of Valtteri Bottas 5th, so 2 Finns in the top 5. Kubica 6th, and Alvarez does indeed get a 7th, so once again Button is the only driver without points.
Poor Jensen. Hopefully if the Tornado deal comes about, he'll get himself a very good chance to get points, but knowing his luck, the Tornado will break down on him if he's ending up in that team for the final race. I mean, let's be clear, wasn't he the one that broke down on the final lap when you had him?
That's correct, yes.
Just imagine the scenes if that happens.
Bad luck or no luck for Jensen, and completing the points was Romain Grosjean on the pole sitter, so Pedersen does get a point and just inches away from last place Exolite in the championship.
Only 3 retirements in this race.
Yeah, again a low attrition rate like Sepang, and all mechanical as well, with Yoshida, Magnussen and Rosberg.
And in the championship, I don't think there's really much for discussion other than Gonzalez now finding himself 1 point behind Raikkonen, so he does have a very good chance to make it a Tornado 1-2 in the final race of the season.
In fact, Raikkonen and Gonzalez have both jumped Vettel in that championship, and yeah.
Just shows how much Shake and Baker fell off a cliff.
Absolutely, like the 5 wins and a 6th, that's the 63 points that adds to Vettel's tally. And if he's not careful, he may still lose 4th to Bottas.
That was talked about, if I'm not mistaken, in the last race by Tobias himself. Imagine the scenes if that does happen.
Yes, in championship contenders to absolute omnishambles. And Tornado, well, they're unassailable, but the battle for third's still quite hot between JRM, Shake and Baker and Gajera, and the battle for last could still be anybody's. I think Andrew are now safe, but FJR move ahead of Mitchell on 27 points each, and then Pedersen and Exolite, penultimate and last. So the final race, Suzuka. From the two of us, we shall see you then.
I thought you said Brazil was the last race.
Oh, it is Suzuka, actually.
Oh, you said Brazil during the broadcast. Oh, I guess we'll see you at Suzuka then.
Whoops, my bad.